Are we up yet?
It says go live, start streaming. I don't see it on the channel. Do you?
Oh, we're up. We are live.
Nice.
We are live. Welcome to BAM Fight Club. I'm Colby. This is Fern. Are we up?
Welcome.
Oh, shit.
Are you getting hella feedback or what? We're trying to figure this out. Colby's live on location.
Okay, I just did a
And
quick sound check for us, and I think we are good. All right, we are previewing UFC Fight Night, Luque versus Muhammad, the rematch, which is taking place April 16th at the UFC Apex in Las Vegas, Nevada. All right, Fern, right off the bat, do you got any what's your overall feeling on this card?
that's what we're gonna go off of his feelings. My overall feeling is this is a filler card, and I am not very happy after so many great cards that we've had. Trying to get excited about these, just looking forward to the future up and coming fights. That it's a great fight card for up and comers to prove themselves, show that they're ready for the next level. But it's definitely hard to get excited. I know a fight's a fight. Gotta get excited about a fight, but when it's pro level, I want to see like 10 people I know on every fight card at this level. UFC's got hundreds of fighters, and when you're kind of, well, I'm personally struggling to find interest in a lot of these besides the main event. Um, I'm still gonna watch, but what's your feeling on it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely gonna watch. I watch every weekend. And is it a filler card? Yeah, I guess so. I mean, there's definitely some fights I'm looking forward to seeing. One of them being Chris Barnett on the undercard. He had a great fight last time we saw him around. He's the guy who did that spinning wheel, the heavyweight who did the spinning wheel kick followed by a front flip to ass plant. I don't know what you call it, celebration dance afterwards. It looks like a really fun fighter to watch. He retired his opponent, was fighting his last match, and man, what a way to send him off. William Knight is fighting. That should be interesting. And then, yeah, I guess the top two fights on the main card, which let's go ahead and just start on the main card. Just briefly go over the first few fights, and we'll probably get into it a bit more on the main two fights of that card. So first up on the main card is Lazez versus Lusa. Lazez coming in as a negative 230 favorite against Lusa, a plus 190 underdog. And from what I saw, I just briefly looked at these guys' stats. Both of them got great records. Lusa's got 2 losses on his record. The rest are wins. And Laziz, the same thing, 2 losses and the rest wins. He's got a few more wins than his opponent. But this is interesting because Lazes is from Tunisia. I don't know how many fighters are from Tunisia, but I'm pretty sure it's
Zero.
not very many.
Like,
and Lusa's from Switzerland, so we've got Tunisia versus Switzerland. That's one thing I noticed about this fight card is if you look at the geographies of all these fighters, this is like all the countries where there's not a lot of fighters. Like Dana just stuck them
let's give
together.
this country a
Normally,
chance.
yeah, it's normally you have a card that's a lot of British fighters. You have a lot of card with a lot of Brazil fighters or something like, or USA. This is just like the hodgepodge mixture, international. Unite. It's everyone who did. There weren't enough fighters to make up a card really in your country, and so you got thrown into this card, and maybe that's why you know you don't really know many of these names. Because countries where there are, a lot of UFC fighters, that's kind of an indicator of talent density. There's a lot of talented fighters in there, so they have a way to make their name. Um, so this is going to be interesting. There's a lot of fights on the main card where the records are very similar. I feel like there's a lot of mirror matches. He's coming in as a favorite. He's a little bit taller. The reach is very similar for these guys. I don't know if you've noticed anything interesting that stuck out to you on this one.
Yeah, I watched actually Munir Lazay's last fight. I don't know how you say his name, hopefully I'll learn one day. Great fight where he came in as a favorite against Warley Alves, I believe, and just Warley was a lot bigger, a lot stronger, and put him down with like three like karate kicks to the liver, just one, two, three, and he slumped over. But great fight where he came out strong, forward pressure. You could just see that he was more ready for like a plan, a battle, like let me draw it out, whatever. Whereas Warley was more aggressive. And watching Luce's fights, I feel like this is going to be possibly a repeat of it. Luce just is physically strong, forward pressure. You just see the strength in him. And it might be a repeat of the last fight if he gets hit, because it just was unfortunate that I didn't get to like see Munir do any of his game plan, implement it, anything like that. He was on the back foot right away. He tried to do hand control when he got taken down, hand control in the clinch, was able to turn him in the clinch. But against a stronger physical fighter, he struggled. You could just tell that he was not ready for those little fights in there. And I don't want to ever say that you want to put everything based on a fighter's appearance, but when you have somebody who is physically strong looking like Angelusa, it's hard to see how the result is going to be any different or surprising. Definitely would like to see both of them, have some sort of good showing, so that we've kind of mentioned this in our other posts and videos, how we want to see the UFC keep expanding into different countries. And yeah, this is a great opportunity to give these fighters, a chance to influence more fighters from their country and hopefully one day get an event in their country.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did notice there was another interesting thing actually about Lusa, which was he uh, lost on Dana White's Contender Series, ended up getting a win in XMMA. So he ended up having a win in a different organization after he fought on Dana White's Contender Series, but he lost. And it's interesting because usually you got to win in spectacular fashion. So I don't quite remember this fight, but it must have been a very good fight and impressed Dana for him to be able to lose that fight on the Contender Series, and then not much later on be doing his debut in the UFC.
Definitely.
Yeah. So let's see here. The next one up is Pat Sabatini versus TJ Laramie. So we've got, let's see, USA versus Canada on this one. Interesting. Sabatini from USA as a negative 490 favorite, which is crazy.
One of
With
the
some of these,
higher ones we've seen.
I
Yeah.
don't understand. Yeah, I don't understand. I understand. Valentina Shevchenko, Usman, like these guys who have been tested in the UFC to have these kinds of odds. But it's really interesting for like really young fighters where I feel like you don't have a lot to go off of for the odds to be skewed as much as they are. So these would be the kind of fights where, if there's a big underdog like that, I almost automatically want to put my money on them. That's a bet I'm looking to make, because it's got to be the least confidence, from the odds makers um, perspective, because these guys are often fighting in different organizations. So it's not like you can compare apples to apples necessarily. If one guy's fighting in say Bellator, another guy's in Cage Fury, another guy's in some other organization, like who they're fighting, it's much harder to, I feel like, to rank them and to do that kind of comparison. So did find that kind of interesting. I don't know, did anything stand out on this one? Or one more thing, Laramie is a Dana White Contender Series winner from 2020.
I would say, the thing that stands out is something that you mentioned. It's interesting to watch these fighters come up to other organizations and run through those organizations and come over to the UFC, and you expect them to have that kind of same success. Except for, Patty the Batty, who has, who came from overseas. Wasn't he Cage Fury as well? Um, he has shown great promise, great perseverance, all that stuff, but he has gotten hit, and he knew he got hit, and he has realized the change in opposition, skill level, and coming over to the UFC, even fighting no namers, and so I want to see, can these guys come over and hang, at the higher level, when both people are super hungry. I don't want to say that, fighters in the smaller organizations aren't as motivated and whatever, but when you're fighting for UFC, you got a chance to fight for bonus of the night. That's 50 G's. You got a chance to be on ESPN, all these things. I don't want to say like when there's up and coming fighters that, being a heavy favorite like that might be, against him, but if he loses, then it's not good for his of not a promising start to his career.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, Anything else stand out on this fight? I'm just looking at their stats. I mean, we got. It seems like we got striker versus wrestler here. I see Sabatini's got his wins are mostly by sub, and Laramie's mostly by KO.
KO, yep.
But Laramie is the shorter guy at 5'6", Sabatini at 5'8". Not sure if that's going to play a difference. Sabatini does have some more experience, is a little bit older at 31. Laramie's at 24. So, yeah, I guess we'll see what happens here. But this is one I'm not knowing much about these guys. I almost want to put my, make that the underdog bet on Laramie on this one.
Yeah, definitely. I think when it comes down to these up and comers, striker versus grappler is a great setup for this. Laramie, I want to see him come out. Being able to get knockouts when you're a smaller fighter, shorter, having to punch up, having to reach, and you're getting more finishes than the taller fighters who, tend to overpower their opposition and grapple and take down and win the hand fighting. I definitely want to see what the outcome of this is going to be.
Yeah, and next one up, another big favorite with Myra Bueno Silva versus Wu Yanan. Yanan. How do you? I'm not sure how to say that exactly, but women's fight coming up here, and let's see, Silva coming in as a negative 490 favorite, Yanan coming in as a plus 370 underdog, and it seems like if I recall, Yanan, uh, it seems like I remember watching her fight. She fought January of last year against Edwards. Yeah, she's had 4 fights in the UFC, so she's a veteran. But she's actually lost 3 out of 4 of those UFC fights. And with Silva, she's had 5 fights in the UFC, one on the Dana White Contender Series, and she's lost 2 of those fights and had 1 draw. But she's a submission fighter from Brazil, so it's the BJJ versus Yanan's wins mostly coming by KO or TKO. So another fighter versus grappler match. This one should be interesting. So this one here is Brazil versus China. Uh, yeah, do you got any thoughts on this one?
No,
Just
one
looking at
thing.
the record, I think I understand why the odds makers put it the way that they are. And these fighters have a few more fights in the UFC, so there's a little bit more to judge them by. So those might be a little bit more
One thing I
legitimate
noticed is
odds.
these girls are on the taller side. They're like what 5'7" and 5'8", and I'm like, damn, like that's
Yeah, for 136 pounds, 135.
yeah, they're like bigger than the guys at that weight. So I was like, okay. And from now on, I have been super excited about girl fights. Every girl fight since like I feel like since the beginning of the year has just been nonstop action, nonstop upsets, oh, everything you could ask for. The girl fights to me, like, I'm excited for this because we've talked about every fight, like, oh, hey, last weekend there was a great girl fight. Hope this next one lives up to it, and they do. And so
Yeah,
I think there's like a new energy, a new wave coming through of them just trying to put on a show and show off and show out, and I'm excited. I can't be enough, excited enough for this. Don't know much about these fighters besides what we've seen online and on UFC or ESPN, but I think this is going to be a very exciting fight. Typical stylistic matchup, grapple versus striker, and I have been loving all the matchups so far between the girls. So I'm like, hell yeah, give me another one, give me two
yeah,
more.
and Yanan, her nickname, I just saw this, is Mulan. I don't remember that part. Is that Disney character? Mulan? Does that
Yeah,
mean something else? I don't
yeah,
know. I
and
don't know what
and
that means.
correction, I always say girl fight, but it's a woman fight. They're grown women. They're not
That's
girls.
right.
So
That
I
is
am
right.
constantly being corrected. I sorry.
Do
But
better, Fern.
yeah, I'm
All
trying.
right.
I'm good. I'm good. I acknowledge it publicly. They deserve
Um,
better. They've been
yeah.
putting
So,
on entertaining fights for me. So excited for this women fight. This woman fight. I don't know what. How do
women eye.
you-
Um,
yeah.
what's the plural there? And yeah, so this is another fighter from China, and we've seen quite a few fighters now from China. I feel like Chinese fighters have there's been quite a few of them, but there's only been a few that have really, I feel like, broken through. A lot of them I feel like just have not had great luck so far in the UFC. I mean, it's still, I feel like, young in the development of the sport in China, because Yanin coming in with 3 losses, 1 win in the UFC. I can't wait until it becomes, the sport becomes more developed in China. More, I know it's been going on for a few years now, but obviously Wei Li and like Sedong are the two fighters that come to mind. Great fighters from China. But it's going to be very interesting if a few years from now, after those gyms have been around for a while, and that experience has had a chance to uh, propagate, and they've been able to bring up more, younger fighters, who maybe start training when they're 16, 15, 16 years old, and they've been training for 5 or 6 years before they actually get into the UFC. That is going to be interesting to watch how the Chinese fighters develop over the years. Next up, we've got Miguel Baeza versus Andre Fialho. And this is pretty close on the odds, negative 160 for Miguel, plus 135 for Andre. Pretty similar in terms of height. Miguel a little bit taller. Very similar on reach. Both orthodox stance fighters, and both of these fighters have very similar records: 14 wins, 4 losses for Fialho, and 10 wins, 2 losses for Miguel. And unfortunately for Miguel, his last 2 fights have been losses. Andres spread them out over a bit longer period, but this is only going to be the second fight for Fialho in the UFC. So still a young in his UFC career. They're both close in age, and this is one where Miguel is from the USA and Andre is from Portugal. So, do you got any thoughts on this fight?
Just seeing the team that Andre's training with, Sanford MMA, I believe they have like Gilbert Burns, a bunch of people, great fighters have trained through there. Um, Vitor Belfort, Derek Brunson, Gilbert Burns, Michael Chandler, all these guys that he's training with every single day. And hopefully he can build off the energy that Gilbert Burns just showed in this past weekend's fight against Kamzat, where he just, you know, whoever cornered him, whatever their plan was, they brought a very great game plan against a stronger, not younger. I think he is, yeah, slightly younger, um, fighter, and I expect to see more of that game plan style coming from that camp. They've definitely produced great challengers at every weight class, and although this is a up and comer fight, I definitely see there being just a method to everything he does. You can't train with people like that and just go out there and swing for the fences. I expect it to be a methodical win for Andre. And again, all these other countries that are coming through, and he's taking the opportunity to come through and train in the U.S. That just shows how serious he is, and you're gonna get better training with that team every single day, and watching them succeed and watching them fail, and yeah, definitely excited about Andre in this fight coming out and showing out.
Yeah, and Andre is the underdog. So we've got an underdog pick from Fern. This one is probably going to be a banger, I'm guessing. It's going to be stand up brawl. These guys both tend to win by KO, TKO. Not a lot of decisions. They both have subs on their records, but it looks like this is going to be probably a stand up brawl. So looking forward to that. Next up on the card, we've got Chao Baralho versus Godzi Omar Godziev. Give that one a try, Fern.
I'd say Kaya Barayo against Gadzi Omar Gadzif.
There we go. All right, maybe you should do these introductions. My God,
No,
these are
you
getting harder
you
as we go
butchering
here.
it makes me think twice about what I'm about to say, and I'm like, oh no.
And this one is Brazil versus Russia. So again, international fighters unite for this card. Man, if you this is like the worst card. Also, if you learned how to read from Hooked on Phonics, you just try to pronounce those. Like it doesn't work out, especially for the main card, Luque and Muhammad, Bilal Muhammad. Just look at some of these names, and yeah, I'm sure they're probably not even pronounced the way that they seem like they should be. It's really hard when you've got like these spellings that in each different country you have the different pronunciations to get those right. I need to like brush up and listen to like John Anik. He seems to always have the pronunciations right for every fighter. Um, I don't practice as much as he do, or as he does,
No.
uh, and it probably won't. But I'll try my best to get these guys and women's names correctly or correct. Very close on the odds on this one. Very close in terms of records. Baralho's only got one loss on his record, and Godzi has no losses on his record. Godzi has a little bit height advantage, not much. Baralho is a southpaw and seems to have a little bit more volume on his in his fights. Anything on this one stand out to you?
Just the submission wins of Kaio. It looks like that's kind of his preferred method. Dana White contender series fighter. His last fight in there was a TKO. That was in October, so that's not too long ago. Especially for these up and comers to turn around and get another fight. He fought in September as well, so September, October, and it seems like he's the more active fighter. Definitely a lot of submission and decision wins on his record. Godzi, looking at him, he's got a lot of finishes: TKOs, submission to punches, TKO punches, TKO punches, doctor stoppage. Dana White Contender Series participant as well. I think this is going to be an interesting one because, we've seen a lot of the Russian fighters lately kind of implement a better, more grappling. I think now, it used to be every kind of culture, ethnicity, whatever was known for a style, and I believe American style is, strongly wrestling heavy, and the Russian European style is super wrestling heavy now. Um, and it's interesting to see how it clashes with Brazilian style, which at the past was, jiu-jitsu or Muay Thai, kickboxing. Watching the different clash of grappling versus wrestling is going to be exciting for this one. I'm excited for this one on the ground to see where it goes. Yeah, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of saw what you saw in terms of the finishes on their records. It seems like we've got submissions versus KOs. So it seems like it'd be BJJ versus I would think striking from the KOs, but I'm guessing I haven't seen these fights that a lot of these KOs and TKOs are set up by the wrestling. Like you said, coming out of Russia, they tend to be very wrestling heavy fighting styles. I'm really looking forward to seeing this one. I think it's going to be exciting. I mean, there's been so many good Russian fighters. If you look over the past 5 years, I feel like there's been these different kind of eras, with these different fight styles, and then also these different geographies where, there's a higher density of talent at a particular time. And I feel like this past few years, Khabib, I feel like he obviously wasn't the first big Russian fighter or successful Russian fighter, but since Khabib, we've now got a few guys who are from Russia who have been, not absolutely dominant, but because some of those fighters are still up and coming, like Islam Makhachev. But man, there's a lot of really tough Russian fighters, and I really love. I myself like seeing the wrestling heavy fighting style. I feel like you take that wrestling combined with American boxing. I mean, Bruce Lee, I think, mentioned American boxing, is an important part of an effective fighting style. I think wrestling, proved itself early on in the UFC, and it's proven super important, ever since its inception. You combine that wrestling with some good striking, some American boxing style, and yeah, that's going to be very hard to stop. Uh,
No, I think you bring up a good point with Khabib, essentially breaking the doors down in the UFC. Everyone knows Fedor, everyone knows like Sergey Kharitonov, who fought in Pride, all these fighters, but now that Khabib's in the UFC, you are getting a lot more of these Russian, wrestlers coming through, a lot of these European wrestlers coming through, and they're doing an amazing job. And kind of it's sambo based sometimes, but the wrestling is definitely what is impressive in these fights when they show out. They're going against sometimes American wrestlers and coming out on top. And definitely want to see more of those clashes where these guys who spend their whole lives grappling, then learn how to strike, and then learn how to finish people. I'm excited to start seeing some of these European fighters start finishing people. Like I look at the American side, Usman, Kamaru Usman, coming through. I think he'd be considered whatever Nigerian or whatever, but he is wrestling trained in America, and
yeah,
once he learned how to punch, knocking people out. Justin
yeah,
Gaethje,
yeah. That's
just
the unstoppable
slumping people.
combination. Yeah,
And so I'm excited to see that growth and how it transcends into the European fighters coming from abroad because they're training in these great camps here in America with these top level fighters and going toe to toe with them. So definitely excited about that fight.
absolutely. And for the main event, Vicente Luque versus Bilal Muhammad. This one's gonna be fun. Luque, man, this is a guy that like flies under the radar. I feel like in terms of how much respect his name has gotten when you look at his record. He's actually, I mean, for both of these guys, they're kind of similar in that way. Like their, you know, reputations, I feel like don't match, what they've done in the UFC. Both of these guys are coming uh, in their last 12 fights with 10 wins. Or let's talk about Muhammad first. Muhammad has 10 wins, one loss, one draw in his last 12 fights. And Luque's got 10 wins and two losses in his last 12 fights. And Muhammad, he lost to Jeff Neal and he had a draw against Leon Edwards. And Muhammad had a loss to Leon Edwards and Stephen Thompson. So, the losses are against, incredible fighters. And they've racked up both of them a lot of wins against some, impressive guys. Luque, he's beat Chiesa, Woodley. He's got a win over Nico Price, Mike Perry, Brian Barberena. This guy has fought, I feel like, everybody in the division now at
Yeah,
this point, like
it's
one by
crazy.
one, climbing up the ranks. He's not like Kamzat. He didn't get to skip like 10 guys, I feel like, to right off the bat. Like he just, that slow grind. And his fights are really exciting. He's a really exciting fighter to watch. And similar with Bilal, he has a win over Stephen Thompson in his last fight, and he executed a great game plan in that fight against Stephen Thompson, where he was just very wrestling heavy. It's like he just, that's the weakness that Stephen Thompson had, and he just executed that strategy perfectly. Kept Wonder Boy down, which is a really difficult thing to do. It's not like Wonder Boy has a lot of holes in his game. He's got really great wrestling defense, but it could not stand up against what Bilal was bringing to the table. So that was really impressive. He's got a win over Diego Lima. Um, who else does he have on his record? Tim Means. I mean, both of these guys, great records, have both done that slow grind to get up into the top ranks of the UFC. And I feel like either one of them, with one or two wins against guys in the top five, they may be looking at a title fight in their near future.
No, both of the guys have great wins over like champions, former champions. I see Diego Lima is a great fighter who's fought in other divisions. Damian Maya, great submission fighter that Bilal took to decision. Damian Maya is a amazing grappler. I think I don't even know who he would be comparable to, but he's always been brought up as, top grappler, was training with Anderson Silva, Nogueira brothers. Stephen Thompson victory with Bilal. Stephen Thompson trains with Chris Weidman, and Matt Serra's team, Sarah Longo, all them has had that training experience with them. So great wrestlers, and I believe Aljamain was training with Sarah Longo or does. So they've had training experiences with those kind of fighters, and seeing him implement that, at that wrestling approach is great because I didn't expect it. I expected him to come out stand toe to toe, and Thompson, is karate based background, and I expected to see a very exciting fight on the on standing, but it is MMA. You have to. I hope every fighter who's watched the last couple fights realizes wrestling is so important. I hate seeing these guys like Jorge Masvidal just get dominated and just have no answer to it. Even Peter Yan, you can tell he trained a certain way against Aljamain Sterling because he really had no answer when his back was taken.
Yeah.
He neutralized it, he stopped it, but really nothing else from there. With somebody like Vicente Luque who has submission wins over Tyrone Woodley who was the champion. Um, you know, I don't
Kiesa,
know.
who's a great grappler,
Yeah, and
he
Kiesa
submitted him.
submits people in the weirdest ways too. So for him to get caught by Vicente just kind of shows how unorthodox he can be. I don't think many people have submitted Kiesa. Um, looking through his Vicente Lucas, oh actually Anthony Pettis by a triangle and Kevin Lee, but that was like years ago, 17,
Yeah.
18.
But
Ah,
Luque's last two fights were submission wins, and I thought of him for the past several years as more of a stand-up fighter.
right.
A guy who's willing to go toe to toe. So as soon as you get in that mindset of you prepare in your camp for, okay, this guy's going to stand and go toe to toe, then he submits him in like that weird Darce choke thing that he does, which he did with the end kiss. So this is going to be interesting because Bilal's last fight, he beat Waterboy Thompson with the wrestling by holding him down, and Luque in his last two fights ended up submitting guys on the ground. So I feel like this is probably going to go to the ground, and then I feel like the question is Bilal's ground game good enough to be able to defend against the submissions of Luque? If so, and he can maintain top position, I think there's a good chance that Bilal comes out on top. But would not want to be on the ground with Luque after seeing his last two fights and those first round submissions against those both those guys, Woodley and Chiesa. That's crazy. So I think the odds makers got it right in terms of the you know probably the odds if you think about it from that perspective in terms of the style matchup. But also, Bilal, he seems like he's really hungry. Like sometimes guys reach that point in their career, they're like, okay, this is it. This is my chance to make the run at the title. But Luque, by the same token, although I haven't heard as much from him, so I'm not sure, how to judge his attitude or motivation at this point. I got to feel that he's in a similar position where they're both getting into that top five. They've got to be thinking about title, and both of the guys are at the point in their career where if they take one or two losses, they might not have a chance to make a run at the title again.
Yeah, Bilal is training with Rufus Sport. Paul Felder trains there. Anthony Pettis, Gerald Mearshart, is that his name? So they have produced champions and have taken levels to that next step. Luque seems to be from a more smaller team, but you got to rely on your skills and your foundation. And Luque definitely has that. You can see that. Bilal, it's been interesting to see him grow to become a smarter fighter. That last fight against Stephen Thompson, like I said, it surprised me 100%. I did not expect him to take him down, control on the ground, but I think he realized that's what I have to do to win this fight to come out on top. He wants. I'm sure everyone would love to see every fighter finish somebody else, but I want to see him avenge ultimately um, that that loss to the eye poke finish against who's the guy. Um, Gosh, we were just talking about it. But the guy's going to be fighting for the title. Edwards, Leon Edwards. Um, I want to see them come back, and I don't know why that fight wasn't made again. But my hope is, with whoever comes out, they end up fighting Leon Edwards or fighting up there. So definitely excited for this main event.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, you know what? I don't know why I didn't catch my eye before, but on the undercard, we didn't talk about Jordan Levitt, he's also fighting, and he's also a guy who is very interesting fighter in terms of outside the octagon. His demeanor, the way he talks in his interviews, seems like a very weird guy. He's a very weird fighting style. He's someone who I'm also looking forward to watch fight. He's the kind of guy that if you met him, you'd have no idea that this guy could probably strangle you or knock you out. That kind of fighter just seems like a super nice guy. But his skills are actually super impressive. What I remember with this guy is he had some weird submission win. I feel like it was on Dana White Contender Series. I can't remember what the sub was exactly, but I feel like he's had some weird submissions. Like this guy's got some tricks up his sleeve, and he's not a longtime veteran in the UFC. So interested to watch his fight as well. Like I mentioned briefly earlier, Chris Barnett. Looking forward to seeing that heavyweight. I'm going to predict a front flip, kick to the head KO against his opponent on that one. William Knight should be a good one. That's another one I'm going to predict a KO on that one, assuming that he can get it done the first round, because I think this guy, if you look at his muscles, I don't see how he's got the conditioning to make it out of round one. So he's hopefully he gets that KO in round one. Otherwise, expect him to gas. Any other fights stand out to you, or anything else on this card you
No,
want to
I
talk about?
hope that everyone on this card proves me wrong. Except for the women, they proved me right that I was excited the most about their fight in the main event.
Yeah.
I want to see more contenders. I want to see more people challenge for the belt in the women's divisions. Definitely, that those seem to be intriguing me the most right now. So
All right. Well, looking forward to this one. All right. We'll go ahead and end the stream here. Anything you want to say in parting, Fern?
now, thanks for liking, following, subscribing. We doubled our YouTube subscribers in like a week, and it was crazy watching the numbers go up. So thank you everyone who likes, shares, support us. Hopefully you guys are seeing we're doing something different. Colby with the backgrounds over here, me just in front of some blinds in a comfy chair. But we're having fun with this, and please like, share, subscribe. Tell a friend, tell grandma, tell your cat, tell your dog. Everyone, get everyone a YouTube account. I know people are milking the system, so do it for us, please.
All right.